Good afternoon. We're doing some business here, doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro. And just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5, Mottek On Money, live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Coming in hot, new readings on inflation and jobs today. Inflation hitting 2.4% in September. That topped analysts' expectations. Jobless claims also coming in hot, the highest seen since August of last year. First of all, the Consumer Price Index, the main economic event of the morning, increased the seasonally adjusted 0.2% for the month, putting the annual inflation rate at 2.4%. Both were 0.1% a percentage point higher than forecast. Stripping out food and energy, the so-called core rate rose 0.3% in the month of September, putting the annual rate at 3.3%. Initial filings for unemployment claims taking an unexpected turn higher, hitting 258,000, the highest since August of last year. Stocks reacting, showing a modest pullback today, coming off of record highs for both the Dow Jones Industrial Average as well as the S&P 500. The retreat for equities coming in response to that, the stickier inflation report for September, and investors taking in what that might mean for the Federal Reserve's next interest rate move. Higher costs for groceries, car insurance, clothing, and plane tickets among the biggest sources of inflation in the month of September. Looks like food prices were up 0.4% to mark the biggest increase in food prices since January. Car insurance has been rapidly increasing in the last couple of years. Prices jumped 1.2% in September, leaving the increase over the past month at a whopping, the past year that is, at a whopping 16.3%. Clothing moving at 1.8% in September. Airfares shot up 1.6%. The aftermath of Hurricane Milton, recovery efforts underway. It was a deadly storm which took aim at Florida's west coast. The hurricane did spare the Tampa area a direct hit. The deadly storm surge that scientists feared never materialized. The storm tracked to the south of Tampa in the final hours and made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane in Siesta Key, about 70 miles south of Tampa. Damage was widespread and water levels may continue to rise for days, but Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said it was not the worst-case scenario that was feared. It's going to be a big night for Tesla, set to unveil its much-awaited robo-taxi at an event here in California tonight, and it was postponed from August. We Robot is what they're calling it, seen as a potential catalyst for Tesla stock, which has lagged the broader market this year. Tough news in the real estate business. Mortgage rates have suddenly jumped higher on the market's dimming expectations for another interest rate cut by the Federal Reserve as the economy shows signs of strength. The 30-year fixed-rate mortgage showing the biggest one-week increase since April, now back above 6% at 6.32%, according to the latest survey from mortgage giant Freddie Mac. Nervous time in the Middle East and the oil markets. Israel's Security Cabinet reportedly getting set to vote on military action against Iran following the recent missile attack by Iran and Israel. Meanwhile, Israeli jets have hit targets in Lebanon. Gulf states are lobbying Washington to stop Israel from attacking Iran's oil sites because they're concerned their own oil facilities could come under fire from Tehran's proxies if the conflict escalates. This according to the Reuters news service. I'll discuss the very latest, the Middle East, today with Rabbi Abraham Cooper at the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance in West Los Angeles. He'll be joining us live later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, and the economy. Joining us live now, Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management, based here in Southern California, author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. You know, the Federal Reserve's got this dual mandate of low inflation, 2% annually, ideally, and full employment. So they've got a double whammy today. We've got higher inflation and higher claims for unemployment insurance. So it's a problem, and I imagine the Fed officials are having some regrets about having reduced interest rates by 50 basis points. And there are a lot of reasons why it might have been premature, even though they wanted to avoid a hard landing. First of all, as you mentioned, that mortgage rates have actually ticked up, even though short-term rates have come down, especially the federal funds rate down by 0.5%. but the open market says rates ought to be higher. Oil prices have been rising because of the geopolitical risk. That's inflationary. Cleaning up and rebuilding after the big hurricane, the two big hurricanes, that's inflationary. We had the dock workers' recent strike, and it led to a very big pay settlement, inflationary. The Chinese government is stimulating. I mean, there are a number of reasons why the Fed may have acted too soon.
On there live with Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management. What's the Fed's next move? They've signaled another cut, maybe a couple of cuts coming before the end of the year.
Yes, they have, but I think they're rethinking based on the numbers today, and there'll be more tomorrow. Yeah, both presidential candidates, Frank, are proposing fiscal programs that would widen the federal budget deficit, and that might be inflationary, especially if we see the dollar get weaker. That's certainly inflationary. It's good for international businesses that are headquartered in the U.S. or do business denominated in dollars, but it's certainly inflationary. So I would say the Fed has a good reason to do nothing when they meet November 6th and 7th.
All right. In the meantime, gold is still near its all-time high. Silver has also had a big run this year. Taking a look at gold, up nearly $7 right now at $2,646 an ounce. It topped $2,700 just about a week ago. Silver is hovering above $31 an ounce. What are those numbers telling us about inflation? And what's your reaction to the big run-up in the precious metals we've seen this year?
I think it's very real, Frank. You know, there have been some very recent revisions to the gross domestic product and the gross domestic income numbers, and what it suggests is that the rate of growth in our economy has actually been understated, and at the same time we have a underinvestment in manufacturing and also obviously housing and even mining over the last decade. That should drive the metals and commodities like copper higher, but certainly gold and silver, and on top of that, you got the geopolitical tensions, which you mentioned, an Iranian missile strike on Israel. That certainly didn't help.
Tesla taking the spotlight today. We'll soon get a look at the Tesla driverless robo-taxi, this big event coming with a lot of fanfare today. What about this event, and what about Tesla here?
Well, it's very big because Elon Musk has been talking about cyber cabs and robo-taxis since 2020, and here we are near the end of 2024. So it's a very big moment for Tesla. The unveiling occurs tonight at 7 p.m. in Los Angeles at the Warner Brothers Studios. Very tight security, obviously. Some analysts, like somebody at Wedbush, who I follow and like, says Tesla might be the most undervalued AI play in the market when you consider, the robo rollout. On the other hand, they're not the first mover. General Motors has got a lead on Tesla in this robo taxi and automated vehicle play. So we'll see. Hopefully for Elon and Tesla, the big dream doesn't turn to pumpkins and mice.
All right. So we have a Tesla stock right now. It was down today a couple of dollars to $238 and change. Would you be a buyer here of Tesla?
Well, I'd certainly be a buyer if I want to buy into automation, AI, and electric vehicles. I think at the top of my list would be Toyota and General Motors, quite frankly. Tesla, though, you can never sell Musk short. Wedbush has a price range target of about 300 a share. That's a pretty good move from here, but the stock has been underperforming now for several years. I'm looking forward to seeing the rollout tonight at 7. It'll be streaming.
All right. And you mentioned AI. No conversation would be complete without talking about AI, certainly. And we see NVIDIA up more than $2 today at 134 and change. The all-time high is 140. What about NVIDIA here?
Well, they're certainly on a tear again. NVIDIA, it looks like they just can't meet the demand. And AMD, Advanced Micro Devices, same thing. They've come out now with a new high-powered chip to compete with NVIDIA's Grace Blackwell chips. And NVIDIA is working with Taiwan to build a new plant. And then there's a mega factory that it's building in somewhere in Taiwan to assemble NVIDIA servers. They're doing that with Foxconn. I mean, the news for NVIDIA and for chips, it's just fantastic. In fact, semiconductor industry sales were up 28% just last month. That's quite dramatic, but AI is for real. And then there's the greening of everything. The green automation era is upon us, and these chips play a big role.
On there live with money manager Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management. Getting back to the Hurricane Milton situation following Helene in Florida, we saw the insurance stocks actually rebound today despite the widespread damage there in Florida. Governor DeSantis in Florida says Florida avoided a worst-case scenario, so the insurance and some of the so-called reinsurance stocks also reacted favorably. How does that work, Gabriel Wisdom? Explain what's going on there, how we saw this rally in the insurance names here today.
Well, the insurance companies set aside for a worst-case scenario because solvency is of prime importance for an insurer. You want to be certain that your company is there to pay the claims. And that's why they also make deals with reinsurers who provide backup coverage. So this is good news that the hurricane did hit Tampa to the extent that was feared. We're also going to see some rate hikes for premiums. I'm almost certain of it. Usually that's what occurs, and that would be inflationary as well.
All right. Any other specific places at this point, Gabriel Wisdom, where you are putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Well, Frank, we heard that Fidelity is the latest big operation to be hit by a cyber invasion, and so I think the cybersecurity stocks are certainly worth considering. There's an exchange-traded fund where you can buy a dozen of them. It's called Amplify Cyber Security. The symbol is HACK, H-A-C-K. You get CrowdStrike, you get Broadcom, Cisco, Palo Alto Networks, and some of the defense contractors that are very big players in cybersecurity, like Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, and Leidos. On top of those stocks, I'd have to say, with all the terrible news about smoking, and let's face it, even smokers don't like smoking, and we know all too well what the consequences of cigarette smoking and tobacco are. But Philip Morris, a 175-year-old company, is now ultimately moving toward a smoke-free future with these nicotine products that they call them reduced risk products. They have a rising dividend history. The current yield is 4.5%. I think the stock certainly fundamentally is undervalued. There are a lot of risks to it, but I must admit I'm looking at PM Philip Morris, just looking.
That's very interesting. I noted CrowdStrike shares moved up nearly 6% today, among the big movers in the S&P 500. What about oil here with the nervousness continuing in the Middle East? We see oil in New York right now hovering just shy of $76 a barrel. Where do you think oil is going from here?
I think it's going higher before it goes lower. These geopolitical tensions are quite serious. And then on top of that, we've now learned that China supports Russia's war against Ukraine, and they become even less favorable to capitalism. One reason why oil prices have been soft is because China's economy has been soft, but now they're reinflating that economy. So I would be reluctant to eliminate oil from a diversified portfolio here.
All right, and as you know, we talk to the biggest fans of crypto and the harshest critics. I know you observe what's happening in that space, and it's always interesting to see how crypto reacts to various economic news. We got the news on inflation today and jobless claims, and we see a Bitcoin right now up about 500 at 60,151. It's been bouncing around 60K for some time now. Ethereum has pulled back now to 2,378. Doge at 11 cents. So what are your observations on the crypto space here at the moment?
Bravo TV star Lala Kent holds nothing back.
There's been so many times where I'm like, I apologize that I said that, but that wasn't meant for you to hear.
Feel you there.
How fun would it be to bring in some Bravo celebrities and make our own bracket?
Iconic.
All right, I'll take Dorinda, you take Sonia.
Sonia is who I wish I could be.
You and me both. I cannot be someone in the program. What's PTO?
Pay time off. See?
Oh.
You've never had a real job.
Give them Lala.
It is nothing but honesty.
You guys know.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Well, Frank, this is supposed to be a decentralized currency alternative, an exchange, a means of exchange where you get around the banks, you get around the regulators, but that's a fairy tale. And we're seeing stricter regulations on cryptocurrency transactions, something just about every day. You could say it's a regulatory onslaught. The Securities and Exchange Commission now bringing lawsuits and enforcement actions. Will Bitcoin continue to go higher? Probably. It depends on how popular it continues to be. I mean, it is the leader. It's the brand for cryptocurrency. There's new IRS guidance on crypto tax reporting that has big consequences for crypto investors. And the U.S. Department of the Treasury and the IRS are very excited about this because it'll generate a lot of revenue. This all begins in 2026, so we've got that.
Terrific, Gabriel. Thank you very much for taking the call here today. That is Money Manager Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management, based here in Southern California, author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel, it's always great to have you with us. Thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank.
And let's get right out to the freeways now on 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Well, now with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation still spiraling, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and silver. Give Joe Morgan a call at 1-800-753-8534 and mention Frank Mottek, and you could get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call 1-800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. A pullback today for the stock market. Both the Dow and the S&P 500 coming off of record highs. The Dow slipping 58 at 42,454. The S&P 500 down 12 at 5780. And the NASDAQ down 10 at 18,282. The yield in the 10-year note is at 4.06%. Those bond yields are rising lately, impacting fixed-rate mortgage rates, which have ticked higher over the past week. According to the latest survey from mortgage giant Freddie Mac, the average 30-year fixed posting the biggest one-week increase since April, averaging 6.32%. According to the latest survey out today from mortgage giant Freddie Mac, mortgage rates jumping higher on the back of the market's dimming expectations for another interest rate cut by the Federal Reserve. As we did get new readings today on inflation as well as jobs, the number of people in unemployment lines did surge by 33,000 to 258,000. Over the past week, according to the Labor Department, the highest level of initial jobless claims since early August of last year. On the inflation front, the number did come in hotter than expected today for the month of September. The rate of inflation on an annual basis hitting 2.4%. Prices rising more last month, more than analysts had expected. The Consumer Price Index increased 0.2% for the month, putting the annual inflation rate at 2.4%. And excluding food and energy, the so-called core rate of inflation rose 0.3% on the month, putting the annual rate for that one at 3.3%. Initial filings for jobless benefits taking that unexpected turn higher. The markets are reacting with a slight pullback today for stocks. Bitcoin, meanwhile, up nearly 500 at 60,151. Ethereum up 13 at 2,378. Doge at the moment at 11 cents. Gold moving higher here now, up nearly $7 at 2,646. Silver up 9 cents at 31.33 an ounce. Crude oil above $75 a barrel here at the moment on tensions in the Middle East. Tesla shares pulling back more than $2 at $2.38 and change. This ahead of the big announcement coming up here this evening. They're having a big event at Warner Brothers, a Hollywood-style event for Tesla, set to unveil their much-awaited robo-taxi at an event right here in Southern California, the We Robot event, they're calling it. Elon Musk has called it a cyber cab. So we're going to be watching what happens there at Warner Brothers in Burbank. Looks like it'll be live streamed via X, by the way, for the Tesla fans out there. NVIDIA shares moving up more than $2 at $134 and change. And now the latest news for you here in 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Much of Florida is a disaster area today following Hurricane Milton, which roared across the state overnight. It was a deadly storm just a couple of weeks after Hurricane Helene impacted the west coast of Florida. Recovery and damage assessment continues. Hundreds of Florida residents had to be rescued in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton after the storm smashed through coastal communities on the west coast of Florida, where it tore up homes into pieces, filled streets with mud, and spawned a barrage of tornadoes throughout the state. Just 2 weeks after the misery brought by Hurricane Helene, the system also knocked out power to more than 3 million people in Florida, flooded barrier islands, tore the roof off a baseball stadium, and toppled a construction crane, among some of the more traumatic damage caused by the storm. Despite the destruction, the governor of Florida expressing relief that Milton wasn't worse, not a worst-case scenario event. As it turns out, the hurricane spared Tampa a direct hit. The deadly storm surge that scientists feared did not materialize. The storm actually tracked to the south of Tampa in the final hours and made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane and Siesta Key, about 70 miles south of Tampa. Damage was widespread and water levels may continue to rise for days, but the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, said it was not the worst-case scenario that was feared. In the meantime, disgraceful scams are already appearing in the aftermath of this storm, and joining us live now is Bree Fowler, CNET, senior cybersecurity reporter. Online scammers looking to cash in on the Hurricane Milton disaster. Absolutely outrageous. Bree, thank you very much for being on this story. Tell us what we need to know about it.
Well, basically, scammers will take advantage of any kind of disaster that's out there. There are a lot of people that need help, and there are a lot of people that want to help, and they're both targets, sadly, in this kind of situation.
Right, of course. Good-hearted Americans see this disaster and want to help, and unfortunately, a lot of emails are sent out. And how do you know you're dealing with a legitimate charity in this situation?
Well, in this case, I would be incredibly wary and skeptical of any kind of unsolicited email, text, phone call, or even a knock at your door. Anybody could be posing as a charity, looking for money that, allegedly would go to help people. But, if it's not a real charity, it's crooks looking to make a buck instead. Phishing emails are super easy to send out. Now we have things like ChatGPT and other AI tools that can help criminals write really convincing emails in perfect English. Most of these scams come from overseas, and they can rake it in if they, just get the right few people.
All right, we're seeing government officials warning about these scams, and you're doing a great job there at CNET, warning the folks about this as well. Any ones in particular that have caught your attention already?
It hasn't happened yet. The FTC and CISA, which is kind of the cyber oversight for the country and the federal government, are warning that this is basically inevitable. I'm sure I'm going to be getting research reports from my favorite cybersecurity guys very soon showing these kinds of things. I mean, we saw this after other hurricanes. We saw this when the war in Ukraine started. People posing as charities, posing as people who need help. And on the flip side, people will pose as contractors. They'll pose as FEMA, saying that they will get you help and get you on a list for a fee. And that is a huge red flag that you definitely should avoid.
All right. And, of course, a lot of these scams encourage urgency, act now, and put pressure on you, or these phone solicitations, of course, do the same. So that's also a red flag, right?
It is a huge red flag. A legitimate charity will be perfectly happy to give you time to check it out, to make sure that things are on the up and up, because if you're giving money to a cyber criminal, that money is not going to them and the people that they need to help. Scammers, on the other hand, want you to click and hand over your money before you think about it, because a lot of times these scams can be avoided and people can avoid being victimized if they just take a minute to think about whether something makes sense, or, whether it perks their spidey senses, that's what scammers are banking on, that you click before you think.
That is very good advice. So you're the cyber security expert. So obviously, just absolutely disgraceful scams out there, especially preying on senior citizens and those who may not be that tech savvy, and even those who are tech savvy can fall victim to cyber security breaches, right? So mom and pa kettle out there just twisting in the wind. What are some of the more disgraceful scams that you've come across just overall lately, where clicking on a link can mean compromising your personal information and so forth?
Well, there are the ones now where they'll impersonate a grandchild or, a family member saying that they need help, that they're in jail, that they're overseas, and grandparents fall for this stuff all the time. One thing that people need to keep in mind is if they're being asked for money in the form of cryptocurrency or gift cards or cash, that is a huge red flag. Losses due to scams have skyrocketed in recent years just because something like crypto is so easy to get for normal, everyday people, including the elderly. And it just makes it that much easy for people to lose vast thousands of dollars that is basically untraceable.
Of course, there are organizations that rate charities. I guess the most prominent one is Charity Navigator, right? So people can, if they have any doubts, look up how their donations are being spent that way.
It's part sports.
We have football on the brain.
Part pop culture.
Dennis Leary. True or false? You refuse to wear a glove with Mickey Mantle's signature on it for the movie The Sandlot.
The Red Sox blood, the Bruins blood, they run deep.
And in the best celebrity interviews.
Robert De Niro here on The Rich Eisen Show. How are you, sir?
Just got over a 24-hour virus.
The antidote is to appear on The Rich Eisen Show.
There you go. I would have just done it earlier.
And you've got The Rich Eisen Show podcast.
There is a medicinal quality to appearing on this program.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Yep, the FTC has a great list on their website. Charity Navigator is one of them. Also, the Better Business Bureau's Wise Giving Alliance and Charity Watch.
Terrific, Bree. Well, thank you very much for putting this on our radar screen, and I'm sure we'll find a lot more information there on your columns there at CNET. Appreciate the great connection here. Thank you very much for sharing that important information with us here. That's Bree Fowler, CNET, Senior Cybersecurity Reporter, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Nervous time in the Middle East. We've seen the oil prices jumping today again about 4% on the spike in the U.S. fuel use before Hurricane Milton barreled across Florida, and Middle East supply risks and signs that demand for energy could grow here in the U.S. as well as China. But the focus of attention now is on the Middle East, with Israel's Security Cabinet reportedly getting set to vote on military action against Iran following the recent missile attack by Iran and Israel. Meanwhile, Israeli jets have hit terrorist targets in Lebanon. President Biden and the Israeli Prime Minister reportedly moving closer to an understanding on the scope of Israel's planned retaliation against Iran during a call this week, according to various sources. Gulf states, meanwhile, lobbying Washington to stop Israel from attacking Iran's oil sites because they're concerned their own oil facilities could come under fire from Iran's proxies if the conflict escalates. That, according to sources talking to Reuters. All of this following the one-year anniversary of the Hamas terror attack on Israel. And joining us live now is Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean of the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance in West Los Angeles. Rabbi, thank you very much for coming to the line and give us your reaction to these latest headlines here.
Well, I just came back from 2 days in France. I spoke the keynote on October 7th at the European Parliament at the presence of some of the hostages' families. Very emotional time. There's a lot of support across Europe for Israel's position, and there's obviously also a lot of opposition. Met with a number of high-ranking officials in the French government. It is basically a mess, and of course, one of the plans being touted about right now is by our Secretary of State, sort of a grand plan of getting the support of Arab countries for new elections in Lebanon for a new president, as if that alone would sort of sideline Hezbollah. The truth is that a lot of the problems we have right now is that the U.S. has lacked a coherent policy in the Middle East, and especially when it comes to Iran. A lot of folks and a lot of people in the Gulf, Arabs who I speak to, say, look, whether or not Israel and the U.S. going to attack the Iranian nuclear capabilities, why talk about it publicly? Why make that the focal point of the comments of the President of the United States when this is a time to take out Hezbollah, which is, the tipping point for the Iranian regime? They will end up threatening a lot of the Gulf states. So there's a lot of confusion in our administration. Frankly, there's a lot of lack of leadership and sort of like 1159 Hail Marys to try to change stuff. It makes it extremely difficult. And then to put the human, especially after being with the victims' families, the 101, we hope, live Israeli hostages that were there. Of course, everybody knows the Herculean efforts of Hirsch Goldberg's parents to try to save his life, the Chicagoans. And they said yesterday that, he was a big strapping guy. He weighed 53 kilos when he was shot behind the head and executed. That's a little over 100 pounds. So the people who are still being held are in all probability being slowly starved to death, besides everything else that's going on. And what that means for Israelis is that despite the very important victories against Hezbollah, that emotional issue of right next door to Israel, 40 miles from Tel Aviv, are these 100 or so hostages, which are almost impossible to reach without basically probably putting their lives in immediate danger. And for weeks, Sinwar went off grid. He's apparently now come back on. But, we have Yom Kippur tomorrow night for World Jewry. I can tell you that every single Jew will be going to synagogue. The first, second, and third issue on their minds and their hearts and their prayers will be for those hostages and for the safety of their loved ones in Israel.
On the air live with Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean of the Simon Wiesenthal Center in West Los Angeles, who's dedicated his life to fighting anti-Semitism. And it must be heartbreaking, Rabbi, to see these demonstrators in New York, as well as here in Los Angeles and elsewhere, what they been doing on October 7th this week. On the flip side, a dramatic display of flags representing the victims of the October 7th massacre in Beverly Hills. At least 1,200 flags on display there at October 7th Memorial Square. Give us your thoughts about these latest developments this week.
Well, you have the pro-Hamas groups like CARE, which frankly have been very close to this administration, and others have worked very hard to try to flip the narrative on October 7th. Not even giving Israel and the Jewish people one day to mourn their losses, and to instead continue with the narrative that it's the people in Gaza who are suffering, who should be the ones who are mourned, and no mention whatsoever of what Hamas did, or the fact that they're essentially using the Palestinian population as cannon fodder and as human shields. And frankly, for a lot of young Americans who don't know very much about history and are more informed by TikTok and Telegram, a lot of that resonates with them. And I think this is a very difficult and challenging time, not only for Israel and the Israelis, but also the fact that people have not come to understand that Israel is actually defending the West and defending the United States. If Iran can send missiles to Israel right now, it won't take them very long for them to be able to aim missiles right here to the heartland of the United States. And the fact that they have cells of people who are looking to kill American leaders being active here, this is a very unsettled time. There are rumors now that come out from intelligence agencies that maybe a lot of the anti-Semitism on social media is being generated from China. It's a mess because we have no filter. We want to talk about fake news and phony postings. We're reaching the point from the technological point of view that, frankly, if they wanted to have Frank Mottek and Abe Cooper, doing an Irish jig on social media, they can probably already do it without our knowledge. And so it's a tough time for everyone. I think it's especially tough time for younger Americans to try to figure out whether it's the presidential elections or economic opportunities, or in this case, what's going on in the Middle East. I think a lot of people are confused about who they're supposed to be turning to. And that plays out in a positive way for the extremists, for the pro-terrorist lobbies that are there, and for the anti-Semites. And we have to figure out a way for neighbors to come together and fight together, educate together our younger generations to understand that, unfortunately, there's evil out there, and we have to do our best to work together as Americans of different religions and faiths and colors in order to live up, to the sacrifices of Americans since the 18th century to give this amazing gift. Right now, I think we're all very, not just on Israel, but more generally, very concerned about the future of our society. And the changes that have to come will not be paid for or dictated from Washington. They're going to have to come from the community, from the grassroots up. And that's why the Wiesenthal Center is here, our museum of tolerance. We're committed, and we're part and parcel and fabric of this community. And we'll work together with anyone who's ready to respect us. We'll respect them.
Rabbi, thank you very much for joining us. As always, wish we had more time, and hopefully we'll make more time for you. And thank you again very much for taking the call here on the eve of Yom Kippur. Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean of the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance in West Los Angeles. Hope to speak with you again very, very soon, Rabbi. Thank you very much for speaking with us here this afternoon.
Be well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz coming your way next, and I'll be back tomorrow afternoon at 4 with more Mottek on Money on 790 KBC.
Bravo TV star Lala Kent holds nothing back on the Give Them Lala podcast.
It's very a lot.
You want the headline.
Here is my interview with Vicky Gunvalson. Who did the biggest number on you?
I'm not friends with Tamara anymore, which is fine.
Do you feel like you guys can repair?
No.
Stick to what you know.
Iconic.
Ooh. Absolutely fantastic. It is like the Super Bowl every episode.
Give Them Lala.
Unhinged, but also amazing TV.
Get ready.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.